It's been a while since I've been able to come home early, so I thought I would make my granddaughter Eva's favorite beef stew today. As I walked, picturing Eva's delighted face, I arrived in front of my house. At that moment, a car turned a corner, so I stepped aside to avoid being in the way. The car slowly passed in front of me. In the driver's seat was my husband Mark, and in the passenger seat was Eva. As I watched the taillights disappear into the distance, I was seized by an overwhelming sense of unease. Eva, sitting in the passenger seat, had her head drooped and her lips tightly pressed together. Her expression was very similar to the one she has when she's been scolded. It was clear that they weren't going out to have fun. 2 weeks later, on a Saturday afternoon, I was at the dealership. "Thank you for waiting, Sarah." The inspection went smoothly, but the mechanic, Jackson, rubbed his hands together, clearly uncomfortable about what he was about to say. "Your husband has been using this car recently, right? I don't think I can say this here. Could you come with me to check something?" I followed Jackson to where the car was parked. Jackson opened a car and pulled out a plastic bag. "Actually, we found this on the floor during the inspection." I looked inside the bag and was shocked. It was the missing panties of Eva. The rolled-up panties were quite dirty. So that's what it was. "I don't need this car anymore. Get rid of this car." I left those words behind and returned home. My name is Sarah. I am sitting at the dinner table with my husband Mark, my daughter Isabella, and my granddaughter Eva. All of us eating together as a family. Eva, who just started 2nd grade, seems to be having fun every day in the new school term. She is talking enthusiastically about her day at school, her mouth full of food. And then my friend Sophia got scolded by the teacher. "Eva, swallow your food before you talk." "Okay." Eva obediently swallowed her food and immediately started talking again. Isabella smiled in exasperation but seemed to be enjoying Eva's stories. Eva is truly adorable. The term carefree child must have been made for her. And you know what, Grandma? The teacher was chasing a bunny and fell into a hole. Oh my, that must have been awful. I hope the teacher didn't get hurt. Nope, she seemed fine, but her face turned bright red. Isabella and I burst out laughing at Eva's story. I felt so happy to be spending such peaceful time with my family. But such moments never last long. Suddenly, Mark's loud voice echoed through the dining room. "Are you kidding me? Why aren't you attacking now? You coward! What have you even been doing until now?" Mark wasn't yelling at us, but at the television. A world judo match was on the screen. Mark had practiced judo in his student days and still enjoyed watching matches. But when he watches, he hurls insults without caring that Eva is right there. This time, he seemed furious over a mistake made by one of the athletes. He kept complaining, completely oblivious to us. "Come on, move forward already. Why aren't you moving? Are you an amateur? Worthless, they're all so damn soft." The racket was so loud that I started to get annoyed as well. Not with the athletes, but with Mark. Having to listen to such foul language was ruining what should have been a pleasant dinner. If he has so many complaints, why doesn't he coach the team himself or get in the ring? That's what I thought, but I was too scared to say anything, worried his anger might turn on me. Once, when I tried to lightly caution him, he didn't hit me but spat a string of insults before storming out of the house. Even after he returned, he stayed in a bad mood for days, refusing to talk to anyone. Remembering that, I decided it was easier to just let him be. Across the table, Isabella and Eva had stopped smiling and were quietly eating, their heads lowered. Looking closely, I could see Eva's fingers and lips trembling slightly. The atmosphere had soured, and we all quickly scattered from the dinner table. As I was washing the dishes in the kitchen, the door opened, and Isabella poked her head in. Her expression was tense, as if something was wrong. "Mom, can I talk to you for a minute?" "What is it? Did something happen?" "Yeah, I was just putting away the laundry, but one of Eva's panties is missing." "Mom, have you seen it?" I stopped washing the dishes and looked at Isabella. "Underwear. Maybe it fell when I was bringing in the laundry. Isabella crossed her arms and came closer, lowering her voice to a whisper. I thought so too, but I've looked everywhere, and I can't find it. I'm starting to think maybe someone stole it. Oh, don't be ridiculous. That couldn't be. It's probably just mixed up somewhere. I'll help you look again. As we were talking, Eva peeked through the crack in the door this time. Oh, Eva, have you already finished brushing your teeth? Yay, I'm all done. Eva, didn't you lose a pair of panties? When Isabella asked. Eva turned her face away. I don't know. You don't know, really. Just as Isabella was about to press her further, we heard yelling from the living room. That's not what you do there. You're terrible. Just quit already. What kind of training results in such an embarrassing match? Here we go again. I sighed, hoping the match would end soon. Isabella sighed too. In that moment, Eva seemed to have slipped back to her room. She was no longer by the door. Hey, Mom, can't we do something about him? If we could, I wouldn't be struggling. You should just go to bed now. I'll head to bed after I clean up. You're right. Well, I'm heading up first then. The next day, I was standing by the front door to see Isabel off to work. It was just past 6:30 a.m. I'm heading out. Please take care of Eva. Isabella, dressed smartly in her suit, spoke to me politely. It was a daily routine. She'd always had a strong sense of responsibility, and it seemed to bother her that she had to rely on me to help take care of her child. But for me, Eva is my beloved granddaughter, so I've never felt the need for such formalities. Don't worry, Eva will be at school while I'm at my part-time job anyway. Right now, it's a busy season for me, so I'll be working late, but Mark will be around, so everything should be fine. Thanks, Isabella replied while checking her bag to make sure she hadn't forgotten anything. Just then, Eva appeared, all ready for school. Oh, Eva, you're already ready. Good girl. Eva beamed with pride. Isabella bent down to meet Eva at eye level. Eva, make sure to listen to Grandma and be good. Okay, Mom's off to work now, she said. Okay, I got it. All right, I'm heading out. With that, Isabella dashed out of the house. She's really become a responsible adult. Hard to believe she used to be so weak and sickly. When she moved back in after divorcing her cheating husband, I wondered how things would turn out, but she seems to have found stability. As I was getting ready to leave for my part-time job, the clock had just passed 7 o'clock. As I was about to see Eve off to school, I felt something different about her. It took me a moment to realize what it was. Eva, where's your hairpin? You know, the one you really liked. At my comment, Eva seemed flustered. Well, if I wear it, the teacher will get mad, so I didn't wear it. Really? That's strange. I don't remember seeing any notice about that. Just then, Mark came downstairs. The moment Eva saw him, she was visibly startled. Then she quickly said, I'm leaving now. See you later, and dashed out of the house. Is Eva hiding something from us? And she seemed scared of Mark, too. For Eva's sake, I thought I should find the right time to talk to Mark about it. Mark was sitting on the sofa, still in his pajamas, watching TV. Since he retired and started working as a part-time employee, he's been having more days off than before. Hey, my work schedule is going to get busier soon. So can you make sure to look after Eva when she gets home? I got it. Don't worry. Oh, and by the way, the car's going in for maintenance soon, so there'll be days you won't be able to use it. With that, I finished getting ready for work and left the house just before noon. My workplace is at a restaurant not too far from home. Usually, it's not that busy, but during this peak season, it's bustling. I'm still worried about Eva, but I decided to shift my focus and walked to work. The restaurant was indeed packed with reservations that day, and we were extremely busy. I was taking orders and handling complaints non-stop, barely getting any break time. By the time I left work, it was already past 9 o'clock. Isabella probably had not returned home yet either. She's working hard to earn money for Eva's future, with permission from her company. She's even doing a part-time job after hours. I just hope she doesn't overdo it and collapse. Thinking about this, I made my way home. As I turned the corner and could finally see the house, I stopped in my tracks, feeling a sense of unease. There wasn't a single light on in the house, and Mark's car was gone too. Mark must have taken Eva somewhere. Maybe they went to the nearby shopping mall. But is it really okay for them to be out this late? I just hope they haven't run into any trouble. Feeling anxious, I opened the fridge, pulled out the leftovers from last night's dinner, and heated them in the microwave. I also chopped up some cabbage as a side dish. Just then, Mark and Eva returned home. "Welcome back. Where did you go?" But neither of them responded to my question. "Do you want to take a shower first or have dinner?" I asked, and Mark simply said, "Dinner." Eva didn't say a word, keeping her head down, without a hint of a smile on her face. Something was off with Eva. Was she holding back her fear of Mark, trying to endure being with him? "Eva, how about you take a shower?" I decided not to press the issue, and gently took Eva's hand. However, she quickly pulled her hand away and said, "It's okay. I can do it by myself," before rushing to the bathroom. Something definitely happened between her and Mark. Watching her small figure disappear, I felt tears well up in my eyes. As soon as Mark finished eating, Eva came out of the shower, and Mark took his turn. I silently watched Eva as she ate her meal, but she didn't talk about school with the usual excitement. She looked utterly exhausted. "Eva, where did you and Grandpa go?" I asked her, but she only said one word, "Secret," and didn't say anything more. After finishing her meal, she quickly went to her room, worried about both of them. I finished my own dinner. A few days later, my busy work schedule finally came to an end. Since I'd be getting home early for the first time in a while, I thought, why not make Eva's favorite beef stew today? Imagining Eva's delighted face, I walked home. Just as I reached the front of the house, a car turned a corner, so I moved to the side of the road to avoid blocking it. The car slowly passed right in front of me. "Wait, is Mark going somewhere?" Mark was in the driver's seat, and Eva was in the passenger seat. Neither of them seemed to notice me as they drove off. Watching the taillights fade away, a sense of dread washed over me. Eva, sitting in the passenger seat, looked weak, her head hanging down, her lips tightly pressed together. That expression resembled the one she wears when she's being scolded. There was no way they were just going out to have fun, but with no way to follow them. I returned home. On the living room table, there was a note in Mark's handwriting. "Taking Eve out. We'll be late. Don't worry." But how could I not worry after seeing them like that? Trying to shake off my unease, I started making the beef stew. Time seemed to move painfully slow. 1 hour, 2 hours passed, and they still had not come back. I didn't take a shower or turn on the TV, just sat there waiting for them to return. Then, just after 9 o'clock, the front door opened. "We're home. Dad's out." "Where's Eva?" Without saying a word, I showed Isabella the note Mark had left. When she read it, she furrowed her brows. "It's strange, isn't it, taking her out this late?" "I think so too. I have a lot to talk about, but first, go get changed. You must be tired." After Isabella changed, I told her that this wasn't the first time Mark had taken Eva out late at night. Isabella had already suspected something was off with Eva. However, time passed without us reaching any clear conclusions. It was much later when the two of them finally returned home. Isabella and I asked them many questions, but their responses were vague, as if they were trying to evade the truth. Just like before, they ate their dinner silently, showered, and went straight to bed. Something was definitely wrong. They were hiding something. But how could we get them to open up? 2 weeks passed without any resolution, until one Saturday afternoon, I found myself at the car dealership. I had brought the car in for a checkup that morning. Mark is the one who usually drives, but the car is under my name, so I'm the one who handles maintenance and inspections. I know Jackson, the mechanic, and we're on friendly terms, often exchanging small talk. A few years ago, Mark had an accident, and we both came to the dealership together. Jackson knows that Mark is the one who mainly uses the car. While waiting in the lounge, I could see my car parked outside through the glass. Next to it, a young mechanic in his 20s and an older mechanic, likely the supervisor, were having a serious conversation. Jackson soon approached me. "Sarah, thanks for waiting. The checkup is done," but he rubbed his hands together nervously, as if finding it difficult to say something. I started to feel uneasy. "What is it? Is there a problem?" "Well, your husband's been using the car recently, right? I'd rather not discuss this here. Could you come with me to take a look?" "All right." I followed Jackson to where the car was parked. When he opened a car door, he pulled out a plastic bag. When we inspected the interior of the car, we found this on the floor. "I'm really sorry to bring this up, but I think you need to see it." When I looked at the contents of the bag, I was shocked. It was Eva's missing underwear. It had been crumpled and was quite dirty, and inside the bag, there was also the hairpin that Eva had liked so much. It was twisted beyond recognition, with what looked like faint blood stains clinging to it. I stared at the two items in disbelief. I couldn't say a word. I was just overwhelmed by shock. But at that moment, I knew for certain Mark had done something terrible to Eva. Since I wasn't saying anything, Jackson seemed to grow worried and leaned in to check on me. Are you all right? If you need, I can contact the police for you." Hearing that, I snapped out of my shock. "Oh, no, I'm sorry. Actually, these are my granddaughters. She must have been embarrassed about having an accident and tried to hide it." "Oh, I see. My apologies for assuming. I thought maybe something serious had happened. But if that's the case, then it makes sense." "I thought maybe something serious had happened. But if that's the case, then it makes sense." He seemed to have been concerned in his own way. "I'm sorry for worrying you. By the way, is it possible to check where this car has been using the navigation system?" "Yes, of course. Modern cars keep a history of locations visited. Sometimes people even use it to catch cheating spouses. Would you like to take a look, please?" It didn't take long to retrieve the information. The car had been to 3 locations recently: Mark's workplace, a regular grocery store, and Mark's family home. Mark's family home is now vacant, and there shouldn't have been any reason to visit. So it was clear to me that Mark had taken Eva there. Certain of this, I told Jackson, "Please get rid of this car." I paid for the inspection and walked home. This car must be a source of trauma for Eva. As soon as I got home, I confronted Mark about what I had discovered at the dealership. "I found this in the car." "What were you doing with Eva?" "Nothing. She probably hid her underwear because she was embarrassed about dirtying them." "If that's the case, why did you go to your family's home?" "The location was in the navigation system history. You had no reason to go there." "I had reasons. I needed to pull some weeds and clean up. Eva wanted to help, so I took her along." Mark was lying on the couch, yawning as he answered my questions. "You were out until so late. Eva is still just a little girl. You're getting on my nerves. What's your problem?" Mark sat up and grabbed me by the collar. "You told me to take care of her, and that's what I did. So why the hell are you blaming me? Don't push your luck." I was terrified, certain he was going to hit me. Instinctively, I closed my eyes. But as furious as he was, Mark didn't resort to violence. Instead, he shoved me against the wall and laughed before lying back down on the couch. I was so scared that I couldn't say another word. "We're done talking? You're getting on my nerves, so get lost. If you push me any further, I don't know what I might do." In the end, I couldn't get any answers out of Mark and had to retreat. Frustrated, I cried alone in the bedroom. But it was clear that I couldn't physically stand up to Mark. He could easily crush me if he wanted to. Still, I couldn't just leave things as they were. As I buried my face into the bed, I began to plan what to do next. That night, after Mark had gone to sleep, I spoke with Isabella about what had happened earlier that day. As soon as she heard it, Isabella's face turned red with anger. "No matter what, I can't forgive Dad. And to treat you that way, Mom, is just awful." She clenched her fist as she spoke. I've been thinking. I want you to take the day off work this Monday. I'll take off too, and we'll have Eva stay home from school. I don't mind doing that, but what are you planning? Mark will be at work that day, so I think we should talk to Eva and find out what's really going on. Isabella crossed her arms and spent some time thinking. I didn't rush her, patiently waiting for her to gather her thoughts. I get what you're saying, Mom, but I'm worried about Eva. She's hurting, I can feel it, I know that, but getting anything out of Mark is impossible. And we don't have any concrete proof. Our only option is to hear it from Eva. Then Monday came. Eva seemed happy to be staying home from school, smiling brightly. That's when Isabella and I decided to ask her the truth. Hey, Eva, where did Grandpa take you? It's a secret. Eva, please, just tell us honestly. We're here to protect you. At Isabella's pleading words, Eva's smile faded. She puffed her cheeks and kept watching TV. Eva, please. Isabella gently hugged her from behind and whispered into her ear. That's when Eva's face twisted and tears began to pour from her eyes. I hate Grandpa. I hate him so much. She clung to Isabella's arms and burst into tears. I gently rubbed her back to comfort her. I'm so sorry we didn't realize sooner. You've been through so much pain, but it's okay now. You're safe. Eva cried for a while, but once she calmed down, she sniffled and began to tell us everything. Grandpa said he was going to teach me some lessons all of a sudden. When I said no, he hit me. What kind of lessons? He called it judo. Even though I told him it hurt, he wouldn't stop. He even broke my hairpin. But I didn't want to get scolded, so I hid it. And I'm sorry about my underwear. I'm in 2nd grade, but I had an accident. Grandpa. Even recalling it was terrifying for her. Eva's body was trembling. That was enough. How could anyone do something so horrible to such a sweet child? I bit my lip hard, trying to contain my rage. Eva, thank you for telling us. I'm so sorry you had to go through that. How about you rest in your room for a bit? Isabella took Eva to her room. Unforgivable. I had made up my mind to protect Eva. When Isabella came back to the living room, I'm going to call Mark, I simply said. Isabella immediately understood what I was planning. She nodded without saying a word. What's going on? Did something happen? My lunch break's almost over. I'm starving, so make it quick. I put the phone on speaker mode. I heard everything from Eva. You've been giving her judo lessons, haven't you? Yay, I have. I've been teaching her judo. His tone was as if he was doing something completely ordinary. You knew Eva didn't want to do it, didn't you? Her body is covered in bruises. Shut up. It's your fault. You gave birth to her with such a weak body, so I had no choice but to teach her judo. I felt my body heat up in anger at Mark's words. Don't just do whatever you want. She's still at an age where she listens to everything adults say. Adults need to be more considerate. That's exactly why. You're an idiot. Listen, the earlier a kid starts sports, the better. Honestly, Eva's age is already late. So don't interfere. You're an idiot. Listen, the earlier a kid starts sports, the better. Honestly, Eva's age is already late. So don't interfere. Why do something she hates? No one asked you to. As Isabella and I fought back, Mark grew increasingly irritated, and his tone became rough. I had a dream of becoming an Olympic athlete. You know, that didn't happen. But now it's different. I can make Eva an Olympian. That didn't happen. But now it's different. I can make Eva an Olympian. That's just your ego. Don't drag Eva into your dream. Shut up. You'd be proud too if someone from your family became an Olympian. You could brag to your friends. Plus, with the money she'd make, we could live comfortably. It's not a bad deal, is it? Mark was determined to make Eva a judo Olympian. But it wasn't for Eva's sake, it was for his own. He was lashing out at his granddaughter because of the frustration and bitterness from his past failure. How pathetic. I was no longer angry. I was just tired of it all. There's no point in talking any further. What did you say? Listen, Mark. There's no one who can fulfill your broken dreams for you. even if Eva were to go to the Olympics, it wouldn't make you great. What are you trying to say? The only thing we can do now is to watch over her as she grows. You know that, don't you? So just give up. Your dream is over. You've got to be kidding me. I. Mark couldn't continue his words. All I could hear was a faint sound of him grinding his teeth. Stop trying to teach Eva judo. If you want to practice so badly, go learn it yourself. With that, I hung up the phone. There was nothing more I wanted to say to Mark. When I looked over at Isabella, I saw that she was silently crying. Isabella, are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Then, Isabella and I started packing our things from the room. We were leaving this house. We had been together for a long time, but I could never forgive him for hurting Eva. From the moment Eva first told me, I had already decided to divorce him. Eva agreed quickly and was packing her school things. After we finished packing, I called a taxi and decided to go to the nearest hotel for the time being. On the table, I left a note saying, "We're leaving. I'll send the divorce papers later." A few months later, on a weekend, we were sitting around the dining table in our apartment. On the plate in front of Eva was her favorite beef stew. She was happily talking about her friends and the fun she had earlier in the day. And guess what? Sophia stepped in dog poop. "Hey, don't talk about that while we're eating," Isabella said, but she was laughing as she scolded her. Watching the two of them, I felt a sense of peace and happiness. Right after we left the house, Isabella explained the situation to her boss. Her boss kindly suggested that we move into a company apartment. Also, my divorce from Mark was finalized quickly. In fact, a neighbor living near Mark's family had witnessed his interactions with Eva. It turned out that what he called training was far from it. The neighbor had filmed the incident as evidence and reported it to the police. That undeniable proof led not only to our divorce, but also to Mark having to pay a large sum in compensation through the divorce settlement. Perhaps Mark realized his mistakes, as he didn't put up much resistance. We arranged for the car to be sold back to the dealer, and it was picked up soon after. "Grandma, listen to me." Sorry. What is it?" I smiled and listened to Eva's stories with joy. I was so glad to see her looking so happy and healthy again. Eva had been emotionally scarred by Mark's actions. Isabella quit her part-time job to spend more time with Eva. I also did everything I could to help heal Eva's heart. Thanks to that, she gradually regained her smile. The emotional scars probably won't fade easily, but Isabella and I are committed to being by her side, always. And you know what? I'm going out again tomorrow, so I'll have lots more stories to tell. All right, I'm looking forward to it. Be careful and have fun, okay?
Making terrible food when the family's all gathered? Come on! After just one bite of the meal, Osborne flipped his plate and the food onto the table, filling the room with his angry shout. All the relatives gathered looked shocked, staring in Osborne's direction. None of them had ever seen someone throw food on the floor like that. They must all be feeling the same way. Hey, what are you doing? It's your fault for making such awful food. Calling yourself a housewife and then making this kind of slop when it matters. Who could eat this? Osborne snickered through his nose. I looked at him with pity. I didn't make it, though. What? Osborne froze, making a foolish sound. Now's my chance, the perfect opportunity. The chance for me, who's been oppressed till now, to fight back. I took a deep breath and calmed myself. My name is Shelley, 32 years old. I used to work for a condominium management company until I got married a year ago and resigned to become a housewife. I would have continued working if not for my husband Osborne's strong insistence that he wanted his wife to be a housewife. I listened to Osborne's request and left my job. Truth be told, I would have liked to work a bit longer, but considering Osborne's income, I figured we could live comfortably without me needing to work. Osborne works for a major consulting firm. We met through work originally, and as we saw each other more because of our shared responsibilities, we became a couple and eventually got married. Osborne had been hopping from one consulting firm to another right after graduating from college, so he was skilled and had a way with words. During our work together, I was impressed by his professionalism and made the first move. I never thought a man like him would be interested in someone as average as me in both looks and abilities, but to my surprise, he reciprocated my feelings. I was so happy that I couldn't stop bragging to my friends about our relationship. My friends seemed fed up, but I was convinced that this was the peak of my happiness. When we decided to get married after a little over a year of dating, I was completely over the moon, unaware of the troubles that lay ahead. You know, I'm busy with work on weekdays, so I'll only be home on weekends. Please keep that in mind. The night we filed our marriage registration at the city office, Osborne casually mentioned it while watching TV in the living room. I was taken aback by his words, thinking we were about to start a happy married life. What? What do you mean? I mean, I'll only be coming home on weekends. Keeps the romance alive, don't you think? Well, yeah, but... What, you got a problem with that? No, not at all. Honestly, I was taken aback by his sudden announcement. A weekend marriage, isn't that unusual? It's strange to decide such an important thing all by oneself. If he really wanted a weekend marriage, he should have mentioned it before we got married. Why declare it suddenly on the day we register our marriage? Sure, seeing each other less might keep the excitement alive. But isn't it natural to want to be with the one you love all the time? I was more downhearted than I expected, having my expectations for our newlywed life dashed like that. Whether Osborne felt sorry for me or was trying to cheer me up, I couldn't tell, but he was unusually kind to me that day. That night, we consummated our marriage for the first time, temporarily pushing the thought of a weekend marriage out of my mind. Maybe it was a win for Osborne's strategy. Looking back, Osborne's declaration was just the beginning. Little did I know, I was about to face much bigger challenges than a mere weekend marriage. 2 months into our marriage, Osborne only came home on weekends, as he had declared. As a housewife, I wanted to cook dinner for my husband who'd come home tired every day, but my enthusiasm quickly waned. Sometimes when he came home on the weekends, he'd eat out instead. So, Osborne hardly ever ate what I cooked. I had been hinting for a while. Can't we stop this weekend marriage thing? Huh? You're just a housewife. Are you really going against what I say? But Osborne would override my opinion as if he were the most important person in the house. Sure, I'm a housewife, but that's because Osborne wanted it that way. I realized that Osborne had me quit my job so he could have his way at home, making me economically dependent on him and unable to go against his commands. That must have been Osborne's goal all along. Lying in bed at night, frustration overflowed. How did things end up like this? All I wanted was a happy marriage. But it's too late for regrets now. All I can do is wait patiently for Osborne to change his mind. I felt like I was thrown into a tunnel without an exit, filled with anxiety. When our marriage hit the 3-month mark, Osborne started coming home only occasionally, even on weekends. This wasn't what we agreed upon. With us barely seeing each other, what's the point of being married? Can we talk about our life together again? I gathered my courage to ask him again on a Friday night. Osborne reeked of alcohol, as if he'd been out drinking after work. At the same time, I detected a sweet fragrance, like that of Venus. It struck me. No, it couldn't be. I've told you over and over. I'm not changing my stance now. Even drunk, Osborne was as adamant as ever in his position. But this isn't what we promised initially. You said we'd spend weekends together. And now? You're not even home on weekends. I never agreed to this. Osborne's face turned red with anger when I said this. I realized I had made him upset. How many times do I have to say it? I won't budge. Why do you always have to complain? Maybe it's time you understood your place. Osborne's attitude, so different from before we were married, not valuing me at all, made me go from angry to just sad. Why did Osborne even marry me? Unable to bear it, I quickly retreated to my room. When I heard Osborne getting into the bath, I crept out of my room and sneaked into his. I didn't want to do this, but I couldn't stand being at a disadvantage anymore. I frantically searched his room for any evidence. Months went by, and our situation remained almost like a separation. I stopped saying anything to Osborne, who hardly ever came home. Something else was on my mind now, so I decided to live quietly for the time being. Then, one day, I received a call on my mobile phone. The caller was mother-in-law, Marjorie. I haven't seen Marjorie since we met for marriage introductions. I picked up the phone, wondering what she wanted. Hello? Shelley, it's me. Marjorie, hi. What's up? It sounded like Marjorie was in a supermarket, with the bustling noise coming through the phone. New Year's is coming up. You'll be coming to our place, right? All the relatives will be gathering, and we'd love for you to join us. Oh, you're talking about New Year's? Yes, I'd love to come. More importantly, Marjorie. I wondered if Marjorie knew something about Osborne and decided to probe. Have you spoken to Osborne recently? Osborne? Oh yes, we've talked several times. I've been reaching out because I'm concerned about him now that he's finally married. He says his married life is going well. What? I was puzzled by Marjorie's statement. Married life is going well? Was that something Osborne told Marjorie? How could our weekend marriage be considered going well? Then it hit me. Osborne must be deliberately lying to Marjorie, making it seem like our marriage is all smooth sailing. Marjorie, being the caring yet overprotective type, adored her son. I could tell from our first meeting and the way she talked about him. No offense, but I think everything Osborne has told you might be a lie. To be honest. I explained to Marjorie that Osborne had declared from the beginning of our marriage that he would only come home on weekends, and recently, even those days have become less frequent. What are you talking about, Shelley? Osborne would never do such a thing. How dare you try to deceive me with lies? Who do you think you are? Marjorie was furious, raising her voice over the phone. I sighed, thinking, as expected. She only believes Osborne's words. She wouldn't doubt that Osborne could be lying. If anyone speaks ill of Osborne, even if it's his wife, she'd go all out against them. That's her way. I'm not lying. If you're concerned, I can record what goes on in the house for a month and show you. Frustrated at being made out to be the villain despite suffering because of Osborne, I snapped back at Marjorie with my suggestion, but she utterly dismissed it. There's no need for such an embarrassing act. You're the worst kind of daughter-in-law. And with that, she hung up the phone. I had a feeling it might come to this. My father-in-law is a man of few words, so I can't tell what he thinks of me, but Marjorie probably just sees me as a convenient wife for Osborne. Knowing this made me feel weary of continuing this charade of a marriage with Osborne. I decided it was time to put into action a plan I had been considering for a while. The day arrived when Osborne's family was gathering at their home for the new year. Unsure of what would happen, I was determined to do whatever I could. I was quietly fired up inside. As the new year dawned, I went with Osborne to his parents' house as planned. Before leaving, I made a crucial call to someone. Man, going to the family home is such a drag. Osborne got ready and left the house reluctantly. Upon arriving at his parents' house, we were greeted by Osborne's parents, aunts, uncles, and cousins. A woman, who seemed to be a housekeeper, was preparing food in the kitchen. She wore glasses and a mask, and understandably, she didn't join our conversations, focusing on her work instead. With so many people around, it was hard to keep track of everyone. Oh, Shelley, welcome. Marjorie, still probably distrusting me after our phone call, greeted me without a hint of warmth in her eyes, despite her welcoming words. Forcing a smile, I lifted my stiff cheeks. Happy New Year! And managed to put on a smile. After that, Marjorie and I barely spoke as the meal preparations went on. I helped in the kitchen as well. My father-in-law remained his usual silent self, sitting on the sofa and reading the newspaper. Once the meal was ready and I had finished serving, everyone began to eat. I noticed Osborne picking up a dish of stew. And just as I was about to reach for some rice, feeling hungry, he exclaimed, "Making terrible food when the family's all gathered? Come on!" The sound of porcelain hitting the floor made everyone's shoulders jerk. Osborne, having flipped his plate and the meal onto the table after just one bite, filled the room with his angry voice. All the gathered relatives looked at him in shock, never having seen someone throw food on the floor like this before. They must all be feeling the same way. "Hey, what are you doing? It's your fault for making such awful food. Calling yourself a housewife and then making this kind of slop when it matters. Who could eat this?" Osborne snorted through his nose. I looked at him with pity. "I didn't make it, though." "What?" Osborne froze, making a foolish sound. "Now's my chance. This is the perfect opportunity. The chance for me, who's been oppressed till now, to fight back." I took a deep breath and calmed myself. "What are you talking about? You were in the kitchen preparing the meal just now." Osborne looked at me, confused, and snorted through his nose. "True, I was in the kitchen. But the housekeeper was there too, right? I was just setting the table. The housekeeper made the meal. Right?" I directed my gaze towards the housekeeper, who was supposed to be resting in the back room. Seeing the housekeeper, who had unexpectedly appeared, all the relatives were taken aback. "Yes, that's correct. See? And just so you know, I invited the housekeeper. Let me introduce her. This is my mom." The housekeeper, no, mom, took off her glasses and mask. Osborne and his parents were shocked to see her face. They obviously knew Mom and were surprised to see her here. Weren't you the housekeeper Osborne hired?" "No. Like I'd arranged that." It seemed Marjorie had assumed Osborne had hired the housekeeper, and now she was trembling. "Hey, Osborne, you know what my mom does for a living, right? She works at a traditional Japanese restaurant and makes delicious meals every day. But today, she made the dishes lighter for the family." "Why did you think I made the meal?" "Because you were in the kitchen until just now." Osborne raised his voice in frustration in response to my question. Indeed, from an objective standpoint, it might have seemed natural for him to assume that I, having been in the kitchen, had cooked the meal with my mom. However, what Osborne, who hardly ever ate my cooking, didn't realize was that my cooking style is quite different. Unlike the meal my mom prepared today, which was light in flavor, my dishes tend to be richer and more robust. I prefer my food with plenty of soy sauce and mirin, making it quite flavorful. "That's true. But the main reason is that you've hardly ever eaten my cooking." "Huh? What do you mean?" Everyone except Osborne, confused by the situation, widened their eyes. Osborne's face turned pale, and he froze on the spot. I decided to confront him and lay bare all his dishonesty right then and there. "On the day we registered our marriage, Osborne declared to me that he would only come home on weekends and spend the weekdays away. It was a so-called weekend marriage. He never mentioned such a thing before we got married." I was shocked. I couldn't agree to it, but whenever I tried to object or discuss it, he would just insist that as a housewife, I had no right to oppose him, and he never listened to my opinions. The relatives were visibly shocked as the truth about our marriage came to light, Marjorie, in particular. "That can't be true. Are you still saying that? Osborne has always told me that he and you are living happily together. Don't say such embarrassing things in front of the relatives." Watching Marjorie staunchly defend her son, taking his side to the point of making fierce accusations, I sighed. It was almost time. Time to reveal that secret. Just as I was bracing myself, clenching my fists, a voice came from the entrance. "Osborne? Are you here?" The voice of an unfamiliar woman caused all the relatives to startle. As one of the relatives exclaimed in confusion, the door swung open, and a young woman peeked in. Dressed in a short skirt, sporting bright red nails, and with glossy hair, she looked to be in her 20s. After scanning the room full of people, she widened her eyes in surprise. "Huh?" she uttered, sounding confused. "Osborne? What's going on here?" she called out to Osborne in a sweet voice, looking around bewildered. It was clear that everyone except me was struggling to grasp the situation. "Noreen, why are you here?" Osborne's expression, filled with surprise, only added to Noreen's confusion as she tilted her head, unable to understand the situation. "What do you mean, why? You're the one who called me here. You said you wanted to introduce me to your family because we're getting married." "What? When did I say that?" "You know, 2 weeks ago." When Noreen showed the message exchange on her phone, Osborne was taken aback. "I never sent this." "Then who did?" As they argued fiercely, I stepped forward to clarify. "Nice to meet you, I'm Osborne's wife. I'm the one who invited you here today." "Sorry, Osborne, but I sent the message without your knowledge." "What?" Both of them were dumbfounded, their mouths agape. Indeed, I had been plotting to get back at Osborne since the day Marjorie invited me over for New Year's. 2 weeks ago, while Osborne was taking a bath late at night, I snuck out of the bedroom and grabbed his phone. It was clear from their frequent exchanges that Noreen was his affair partner. So, I decided to lure her here today, pretending to be Osborne, to catch them in the act. The relatives began to murmur among themselves after hearing our exchange. And Osborne's parents' faces turned pale. I had my suspicions. Why would Osborne start a life where he only comes home on weekends right after we got married? A weekend marriage means we barely see each other. What's the point of being married if that's the case? If he really loved me, he wouldn't want such a life. That's because I'm busy with work. I've told you this many times. Even after all this, Osborne was still trying to resist. In disbelief, I sighed heavily in exasperation. Work? Yes, I believed that at first. But then I started smelling perfume on you when you came home at night. I couldn't believe it, so I hired a detective to investigate. What? An investigation? Osborne trembled all over. I pulled out a report from a private detective from my bag and thrust it at both Osborne and Noreen. I had suspected Osborne's infidelity and had hired a detective a while back. Evidence of his cheating was quickly found, allowing me to gather a substantial amount of proof. You started dating 5 years ago when Noreen was just 15. You picked her up in town and started a relationship. Of course, you couldn't marry a child like Noreen. Plus, she's working in the nightlife industry now. I doubt your parents would approve. But you felt pressure from your parents to marry soon. So, you settled for a safe choice like me to stop them from nagging, all the while continuing your relationship with Noreen, planning to divorce me under the guise of being busy with work, and then marry her. That's the gist of it. I pieced together the information I learned from the detective's report and the message exchanges between Osborne and Noreen, exposing their deceit. What are you saying? Osborne would never. Marjorie tried to defend Osborne, but faced with the irrefutable evidence, she could no longer argue and her shoulders slumped in defeat. Osborne and the woman, Noreen, were trembling as they looked at each other. Eventually, Osborne broke the silence with an accusation. This is low. Using tactics like this to disgrace us, it's filthy. At his words, I felt a surge of anger so intense it felt like my veins might burst, and I shouted back. Low? What are you talking about? The only low thing here is you, disappearing right after we got married. Approaching me while having someone else, using me, and then playing the victim? You were just waiting for me to get fed up and initiate a divorce, weren't you? Well, sorry to disappoint. We will get divorced, but you'll be paying me a fair settlement in court. And you too, Noreen. I glared at Osborne and Noreen with the most intimidating look I had ever mustered. Why me? I don't have any money. Please, forgive me. I was wrong. But please, not the settlement in court. Ignoring their pleas, I glared at them once more. Just get out of here, now. And yelled. At my scream, Osborne and Noreen finally scurried out of the house with yelps. I sincerely apologize for the disturbance, everyone. As I stepped back, sighs of relief were heard among the relatives. They were all dumbfounded by Osborne's actions, at a loss for words. Shelley. I don't know what to say. Marjorie, who had staunchly believed in Osborne and criticized me, now looked away awkwardly. I left the in-laws' house with my mom, who had pretended to be the housekeeper. I likely wouldn't return to this house again. My troubled marriage of 1 year to Osborne thus came to an end. A few days later, I had Osborne sign the divorce papers and filed them at the city hall. I was officially single again. Although now divorced, my marriage had been so brief and distant that it hardly felt different. Since Osborne and I had lived in a rented apartment, I effectively evicted him without further issues. Afterward, Osborne, lacking funds due to squandering money on his mistress, had to ask relatives for a loan to pay the settlement ordered in the divorce. Despite his supposed elite job, his financial woes were due to his lavish spending on his mistress. However, after the New Year's incident, no relative was willing to lend him money. He was forced to take out a bank loan. Noreen, too, took out a loan to pay her part of the settlement for the divorce court. With both of them now embroiled in the struggle to repay their loans, any plans for marriage had to be postponed. At least until they managed to clear their debts, as both sets of parents unanimously advised against marriage under such financial strain. The in-laws, likely fed up with being entangled in any more trouble, seemed to think it was only fair for them to experience the hardship of debt repayment. Let him struggle with paying his debts for all I care. Compared to the year of suffering I endured, earning money to repay his debts seemed easy, almost like it was someone else's problem. Meanwhile, I returned to my previous job at the condominium management company and am now enjoying my work. It's much better for my mental health than staying cooped up at home. If I ever consider marriage again, I've quietly vowed to myself that it will be with someone who is supportive of both partners working. It was during a family trip with my in-laws and brother-in-law's family. I was shocked when my 9th grader, Lola, confessed she was pregnant. Right after, I got a call from the hospital. Lola and my husband, Madison, had been rushed to the ER. I gasped at the police explanation. Please listen calmly. It was a murder-suicide. What? The blood drained from my body and I started shaking. My gentle Madison would never do such a thing. Seeing Madison and Lola unharmed only strengthened that belief. Later, my sister-in-law Eleanor and family arrived at the hospital. While my in-laws, Madison and Lola stepped out, Eleanor whispered to me, "That girl thinks she got pregnant just from getting cozy with her boyfriend. Stupid, right?" As I grew flustered, Rilla mocked me with a laugh. "We gave her a toy pregnancy test and she freaked out thinking it was real. Her pale, crying face was hilarious." Anger heated my body as they laughed. I won't forgive this. Rilla and Eleanor. I'll make you regret making me truly angry. I'm Aaliyah, a 48-year-old housewife. I've been married to my same-age husband, Madison, for 17 years. Madison and I have a daughter, Lola. She's an honest, kind girl we're proud of. We lived an ordinary life, the three of us laughing at TV variety shows or squealing with Lola over music idols. But one day, our average days came crashing down. Madison has an older brother, Garrett, who lives with my in-laws in the next town. Garrett and his wife have a daughter, Rilla, 2 years older than Lola. She's a cute girl who takes after her beautiful mother, Eleanor. But being spoiled by Garrett and Eleanor, she does whatever she wants. I'd rather not have Lola associate with her much. But they're cousins who attend the same elementary and middle school, so it can't be helped. We live in a rural area, so all the relatives gather at my in-laws during long holidays, summer break, and Christmas. My in-laws are good people who dote on Lola like Rilla and look forward to seeing her grow. But I couldn't stand Garrett and Eleanor from the start of my marriage. They're graduates of a nationally renowned university. Garrett, who works for a large corporation, constantly looks down on Madison for being dumb and poor since he works at a small company. Eleanor smugly blogs about her carefree housewife life and pities me for still working after marriage. That's one thing, but I can't forgive them for mocking Lola too. Poor thing, being born to impoverished parents. Too bad she wasn't born cuter. And every time we meet, Eleanor brags about Rilla's looks. Our girl is a beauty like her mom, she's a hit at kindergarten. A modeling agency scouted her. Well, I wouldn't send her to such a small place. In group photos, I feel bad for the other kids. They're all just foils for Rilla. Rilla, adored and spoiled by her parents, couldn't possibly grow up to be decent. Since she was little, she acted queenly with snide words and actions. For example, this one time. After giving birth to Lola and my maternity leave, I returned to work full-time. On weekdays, I'd drop Lola at nursery school. On my occasional weekend workdays, I'd have Madison watch her or ask my in-laws. As Lola got older, I'd let her stay home alone for short periods while I went to work. Lola and I made a promise. Whenever I went out, I had to tell her my destination by smartphone message and come home before dusk. She was a girl who kept promises, so Madison and I trusted Lola and let her be fairly independent. But there were times when Madison or I would come home for dinner and Lola still wasn't back. Those times, Rilla had dragged her around. Checking GPS, they were usually at the nearest mall. When I called Lola's smartphone, she'd answer in a helpless voice. "Mom, I'm sorry. Rilla says she still wants to play games and won't listen." Her feeble reply made me furious. An hour later, when Rilla and Lola returned, I scolded them. "You're still in elementary school, you know. How long are you going to stay out playing?" Rilla then said in a cheeky tone, "Aunt, I'm being nice by playing with Lola. You should be grateful." Rilla took the bag Lola was holding and went home. When I asked about it later, of course, Rilla had made Lola treat her to everything from drinks to lunch. When Madison called Garrett to protest, he arrogantly said, "That much is no big deal. Don't be so stingy." The selfish Rilla is disliked by other girls, so no one wants to be around her except Lola. If Lola didn't answer the door, Rilla would keep ringing the doorbell. Even if Lola said she had homework, Rilla would forcibly drag her out saying just for a bit. We were troubled, but being relatives, there was a limit to how harshly we could reject Rilla. Dealing with her was a constant concern. Eventually, after starting middle school, Rilla began excessively antagonizing Lola. One winter evening, Rilla stormed over to our place after school, yelling, "Lola, don't you dare talk to him so casually without my permission." "I'm sorry." Lola meekly apologized to Rilla, shouting at the entryway, "My friend said she likes him. She wanted to confess before moving, so I went with her." "What? You actually like him yourself, don't you?" "No, I don't." Lola denied it loudly, which was unusual for her. I abandoned the dinner preparations and dashed from the kitchen to the entryway. I stepped between Rilla and Lola, facing off. "Rilla, that's enough, don't you think?" "Don't butt in, Aunt. This is discipline." Rilla narrowed her eyes. "The nerve of Lola to talk to boys on her own. An ugly girl like her should just stay quiet." Rilla was a flashy beauty, but her nasty personality seeped through her appearance. Lola, on the other hand, may not be classically beautiful, but she's a cute girl with an impressively natural smile. I couldn't forgive Rilla for mocking her like this.
Hey! There are things you should and shouldn't say.
Irritated, I unintentionally raised my voice.
Go home already! Don't ever come to our house again!
As I yelled, Rilla smirked.
But Lola's going to my high school, right?
I was at a loss for words. Lola, who aspires to be an interpreter, plans to attend Rilla's high school next spring for its international program. It's the only school in the state with a sister school in Germany and a well-established exchange program.
I can't wait to have you as my underclassman next year.
Flashing a nasty grin at Lola and me, Rilla left. I was bothered by Rilla's meaningful attitude, but surprisingly, Lola didn't seem to mind.
Rilla is in the general program, right?
The international program building is separate, so we'll hardly meet. Indeed, the two school buildings are on different grounds with some distance between them. Except for students in the same club, students in each program have little interaction. For Lola, who has loved German since childhood, giving presentations and entering essay contests to hone her skills, getting into that school is the first step toward her dream. She probably can't be bothered by Rilla's snide remarks. However, a while after the new year, Lola visibly lost her energy. She hardly ate, and even when spoken to, she seemed dazed. At first, I thought she must be sleep-deprived from studying late at cram school with entrance exams coming up. But sometimes Lola would give me a look as if she wanted to say something, or start to say something but stop.
You haven't seemed well lately.
You look pale too. Is something troubling you? When I asked, Lola forced a smile and denied it.
No, it's nothing. You know, I'm just nervous with the entrance exam coming up.
If that's all, then good. But if anything's wrong, tell me. Mom's always here to listen.
Yeah. Thanks.
Lola seemed preoccupied, but stubbornly refused to open up. However, even after getting into her desired school, Lola's condition didn't improve. Did something happen at school? Even when I asked, she weakly denied it. On days off, she'd shut herself in her room all day. She'd slowly come down the stairs only at mealtimes, but always leave more than half uneaten. Madison and I were wondering if it was time to take her to a psychiatrist. That's when Garrett called Madison. Huh? A vacation? There are events too? Madison put it on speakerphone so I could hear as I prepared dinner in the kitchen.
You know, Lola got into Rilla's high school. And her birthday is coming up. Mom suggested we all eat something nice together to celebrate both.
Garrett's explanation made sense to me. It was just like my mother-in-law Katie, who sends Lola a birthday card every year, to come up with this idea.
We'll meet there and go our separate ways after. Other than dinner, each family can look at the ocean, go to events, do whatever they want.
Right. I'll discuss it with Lola and get back to you later. Leaving the response pending, he hung up for now. At dinner, when I mentioned the trip to Lola at the table, a faint sparkle returned to her hollow eyes. Will we have separate rooms for each family?
Of course. Look, you can see the ocean from the rooms. The sea at night is romantic too.
When I showed her pictures of the ocean view at the destination, Lola's eyes widened. Mom, can we sleep together?
Sure, that's fine.
Then I want to go. And so the vacation with my in-laws and Garrett's family was decided. Unfortunately, it didn't go peacefully. The sea breeze caressing our cheeks and the endless scenic views didn't seem to console Lola's depressed mood. As Garrett's family made a huge fuss taking endless pictures of Rilla, Lola watched with a cold gaze. She smiled for just a moment eating gelato on the cafe terrace or at meals. But after a little while, her expression would darken again. It seemed I had no choice but to wait until Lola and I were alone in the room for her to confide in me. That evening, gathered in the spacious dining room with my in-laws and Garrett's family, we enjoyed fresh seafood together.
Congratulations on getting in! And happy birthday!
The underage Lola and Rilla poured orange juice into their glasses and toasted with the adults' beers.
They grow up so fast, starting high school in the spring. Lola's finally going to be Rilla's underclassman, huh?
Swayed by my in-laws' smiles, Lola's face also brightened. With Eleanor and Rilla in front of their grandparents, even they refrained from their usual snide remarks for once. After finishing the meal, as promised, I went to the room together with Lola.
Wow, it's so pretty!
I let out an unintentional gasp as I looked up at the night sky. The round moon shone brightly overhead, its reflection glimmering on the sea's surface. But Lola still wore a gloomy expression. After a while, Lola began to speak heavily.
Mom, what is it?
I asked nonchalantly.
I think I'm pregnant. What?
Not understanding, I asked again. In a small but clear voice, Lola said the words.
I think I'm going to have a baby.
I stared at Lola's face. Then, tears welled up in Lola's eyes and spilled down her cheeks.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Mom.
Calm down, I told myself. Confused, I asked questions. Did you take a test? Have you been to the hospital? Lola shook her head weakly.
I took a home test and it was positive. I haven't gone to the hospital yet.
Then let's go to the hospital after the trip. It could be a mistake. Lola looked at me with surprise.
Mom, you're not mad?
Getting angry won't solve anything. I pulled Lola's head close and stroked it gently. Thank you for telling me. You must have been so scared and anxious. Lola burst into heavy sobs. Poor thing. I felt like crying too. By the way, Lola, can I ask who the father is? Of course, it takes two to make a baby. I had absolutely no idea. Her shoulders shaking, Lola choked out the words.
I'll tell you everything, just give me a little time.
Okay. Let me know when you've collected your thoughts. I conveyed that, trying not to get emotional. In any case, let's go to the hospital once we're back from the trip. We can think about the future after that. Even if Lola ends up as a single mother, Madison and I will support her and figure it out somehow. Looking a bit more at peace, Lola went to the hotel shop just as Madison returned from outside. When I told him about the pregnancy, he was even more shaken than I was, but came to the same conclusion. I had no idea Lola had a boyfriend either. Tomorrow, I'll try to casually ask her about him. After thinking a bit, Madison said with a troubled look, "It's hard to imagine our cautious Lola doing something reckless like that. And she might have used the pregnancy test wrong."
Yes. Please try asking her too.
In any case, as her parents, we'll be on Lola's side. That's the decision we reached. The next evening, after enjoying a lavish dinner, Madison invited Lola for a walk along the beach. With the sea breeze chilly, they put on jackets and headed out. As I was sipping liqueur I bought at the grocery store, gazing at the full moon and night sea from the window of the hotel that allowed outside food and drink, my smartphone suddenly rang. Answering the call, the person identified himself as an EMT from the city hospital. My heart raced with a bad premonition. "Your husband and daughter were brought in. Can you come right away?" I nearly stopped breathing. Grabbing only my smartphone and wallet, I dashed out of the hotel and hurried to the car. I have no memory of where or how I drove, but I found myself at the hospital. In front of a door with a red light indicating treatment in progress, I sat slumped on a bench in the dimly lit hallway when the police arrived. Showing me their badges and confirming my identity, they spoke to me in stiff tones. Please listen calmly. It was a murder-suicide.
What?
It appears your husband pushed your daughter off a cliff into the sea, then jumped in himself. The blood drained from my body and I began to tremble.
That has to be some kind of mistake.
We have actual eyewitness accounts. The chilling words nearly sent me into a panic. However, when we questioned others, we heard different accounts. We're investigating thoroughly now. After asking me a few more questions, the officers left. A while later, the ER doors opened and Madison and Lola appeared.
Madison, Lola. You're okay.
I tried to run to them, but my knees buckled and I collapsed on the spot. As I started crying, Lola teared up too.
Mom, I'm so sorry for worrying you. Dad and I just got some scrapes.
Right after we fell, local fishermen rescued us. We briefly passed out from swallowing seawater. Madison's gentle smile convinced me. There's no way Madison would push Lola off a cliff. It had to be a mistake. The two had bandages wrapped around their scraped arms and legs. Miraculously, they got away with just bruises. They got CT scans done and nothing seemed abnormal.
Oh right, Mom. There's no baby.
What? Lola told me sheepishly as I looked on in surprise.
I had them check if the baby was okay. Turns out I'm not pregnant. My period was just late. Sorry for causing a big fuss.
Madison and I looked at each other and laughed, the tension draining from our bodies. Oh, is that so? That's a relief. My in-laws, who had been out, also rushed to the hospital with Garrett's family. Garrett and his family were yawning hugely, but my in-laws checked that Madison and Lola were safe and calmed down. While Madison and Lola went to pay the bill and my in-laws went to the hospital shop, Rilla and Eleanor approached me. They whispered in my ear as I grew wary.
Lola's an idiot, isn't she?
Huh?
She thinks she got pregnant just from getting cozy with her boyfriend. What a bird brain.
As I looked on in shock, Rilla laughed creepily too.
When we gave her a toy pregnancy test, she totally freaked thinking it was real. Her pale, crying face was hilarious.
So these two were the cause. The moment I realized, fury welled up in me. I clenched my teeth and glared at Rilla and Eleanor. But I couldn't very well yell at them in the hospital, so I desperately held back my anger. Rilla had jerked us around so much until now. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it since we were cousins. Being close in age and the same gender, I had a faint hope they might get along someday. But I'd reached my limit. I won't forgive this. Rilla and Eleanor. I'll make you regret making me truly angry. The next day, after finishing breakfast with Madison and Lola in the hotel dining room, I went home briefly to get something. Returning to the hotel, I called my in-laws and Garrett's family to our room.
What is it? We're checking out at noon. I'm busy getting ready to go.
Garrett was in a foul mood after oversleeping and scrambling through his meal. Seeing Madison and Lola lined up, he seemed to want to make a snide remark and smirked.
But man, Madison, that's awful. Sure, I'd freak out too if Rilla got pregnant, but I wouldn't push her off a cliff. If that happened to me, you'd probably punch the guy. Ugh. Oh, yeah, that's more likely.
As Garrett and his family laughed, my in-laws wore sad expressions beside them. Stop that. There's no way Madison would do such a thing.
Hey, you never know, right?
I turned a sharp gaze on Garrett's family. Garrett, where did you hear that rumor?
Yesterday, some fishermen picking up trash on the beach were talking about it. Right, Rilla? Yep,
Rilla replied, sounding delighted.
when Mom and I went for a walk in the evening, the fishermen were talking. They said they saw a father and daughter arguing. After that, the father pushed the girl off, then jumped into the sea himself.
That has to be about Madison and Lola.
Someone must have seen them and spread the rumor.
Did you even tell the police that way? Eleanor nodded at my question.
Of course. But Madison, you told the police you didn't do it, right?
Actually, after returning to the hotel from the hospital, the police showed up again and Madison and Lola told them everything that happened last night. Obviously,
I didn't push Lola off or anything. I told the police that too,
Madison explained, sounding fed up.
but there are eyewitness accounts.
Lola, someone pushed you off, right?
I was definitely pushed, but there's no way Dad would do that.
Eleanor shrugged at Lola, getting worked up.
I get you want to protect your family, but
Come to think of it, Eleanor,
the principal of Lola's high school lives in this town, right?
Eleanor broke into a cold sweat and Rilla turned pale.
Really? I had no idea. Wow, Aunt, you sure know a lot.
Their reactions seemed to say, "How the heck do you know that too?" which amused me.
After I got back from the hospital in the evening, Lola and I asked around the fishermen while helping them clean up trash on the beach.
Rilla and Eleanor exchanged glances at my words. They were clearly shaken. They obviously hadn't expected us to go that far. Apparently, the ones spreading rumors that Madison pushed Lola into the sea were a beautiful mother-daughter pair rarely seen around these parts. Lola said, eyeing the fidgeting Eleanor with an unusually stern tone.
I've been thinking about why they would do such a thing. They must have wanted to spread nasty gossip so that I'd get rejected by the school.
Katie furrowed her brow.
So you're saying this was the work of someone holding a grudge against Lola? But for a prank, this is going too far. Madison could face assault charges, you know, my father-in-law Alvin said indignantly.
I explained to him. They probably thought the charges would be cleared if the police investigated. As long as the school denied my admission, they would have been satisfied. Their real goal was to pull an elaborate trick to harass Lola, right? As I glared at Eleanor and Rilla, my in-laws and Garrett went wide-eyed with shock. When Lola came to you two for advice, you pretended to listen sympathetically but then played a malicious prank on her. You made her think she was pregnant, didn't you?
What? Rilla and them are the reason Lola thought she was pregnant? What did you do to Lola?
Even when questioned by my in-laws, Eleanor and Rilla just sullenly looked away. Judging by how dumbfounded Garrett seemed, he clearly hadn't known anything about it either. Realizing there was nowhere left to run, Eleanor and Rilla sighed in exasperation and reluctantly confessed.
Yeah, we were just messing with her a bit. We didn't think she'd actually believe it though.
The two of them said with a laugh.
I mean, getting pregnant just from some kissing and hugging? What kindergarten-level knowledge? I knew that too. I was just double-checking that my period was late, that's all. But then you two said with a straight face you're definitely pregnant.
Lola desperately explained, her face beet red.
I have a boyfriend, but I knew I couldn't be pregnant. So I figured it was just exam stress making me feel sick. That's what I told you, remember? I thought Mom would worry if I asked her, and since you're girls too, you'd give me advice. But you insisted it was morning sickness.
Rilla and Eleanor listened to Lola's story while laughing mockingly. Furious, I shared what Lola had told me.
Lola said you told her some women can get pregnant just from a little physical contact with a guy.
Why don't you take a test just in case, and made her use a gag gift pregnancy test. Recalling that moment, Eleanor and Rilla burst out laughing.
We didn't think she'd take it seriously. It was so hard not to laugh. Lola always acts so high and mighty. It was hilarious seeing her pale and flustered face.
I glared hatefully at Rilla and Eleanor as they fell over cackling on the floor. Lola trusted you enough to confide in you. How could you treat her like that? Rilla looked at me, the corner of her mouth twisting.
I've always hated her guts. Since we're cousins, she always gets compared to me. Being class rep, winning debate competitions, getting good grades, that ugly girl acts so full of herself.
She spat resentfully.
I told Mom and I would go with her to the hospital, and not to tell Auntie Aaliyah yet. But then yesterday in the hallway, I overheard Uncle Madison talking to Lola.
Oh? What did he say?
That they shouldn't put much strain on her body, so maybe they should go for a short walk and come back. When I realized she'd betrayed us, I got so pissed.
Yep, that's why we spread the rumor that Madison pushed Lola in. Eleanor added gleefully.
Word spreads fast in a small town. I'm sure it would reach the principal's ears. I hoped she'd get rejected from the high school she always wanted to go to and be utterly crushed.
Appalled, I said to the snickering Rilla and Eleanor. But you know, pushing someone into the sea is a crime. You didn't realize that?
No way, even we wouldn't go that far. Right, Rilla? Yeah. You got any proof?
I smiled at the two of them, looking so self-assured. We got eyewitness testimony when asking around.
What? You're lying.
Rilla and Eleanor were visibly shaken. It's true. Apparently, two long-haired women snuck up behind Madison and Lola.
It was someone else.
Eleanor promptly shouted. Sorry, but that won't fly. You two really stand out, you know. There was a full moon last night, so it was bright. Isn't that right? I turned to face the doorway and called out. 3 well-built fishermen, tanned black by the sun, nodded in agreement.
When did they?
The fishermen spoke one after another, ignoring the perplexed Eleanor and Rilla.
Yep, no doubt it was these two. The beautiful mother-daughter pair was burned into my memory. They were causing a ruckus, saying the dad had apparently pushed his daughter in and to call an ambulance.
The men nodded.
They were going around telling everyone who came to see what the commotion was. Saying in this weirdly detailed way that the dad got mad his daughter was pregnant and pushed her into the sea. They were also asking folks if the principal of some academy really lives around here.
Seeing Eleanor and Rilla's faces, I could tell the memories were vividly coming back to them. The fishermen divulged even more detailed testimonies than when they talked to me.
Shut up. Don't talk so much. But it's the truth, you know. Yeah, that's right.
Eleanor and Rilla gnashed their teeth in frustration at the nonchalant fishermen. To think that the beauty you've been boasting about would backfire like this. I thanked the fishermen while glancing sideways at Eleanor and Rilla, who had grim expressions, and sent them home. I suddenly noticed that my in-laws, who had been silent until now, were seething with anger. Even my usually gentle in-laws seemed to be furious this time. Then, Garrett, who had been silent for a while, voiced his question. I know you guys despised Lola. I'm not particularly surprised, but... He cut off his words and tilted his head. I was just wondering how you happened to have a pregnancy test prank kit on hand. I didn't even know such things were sold online. Rilla also asked Eleanor.
I was curious too. Hey Mom, why did you have that thing?
Eleanor's face instantly stiffened.
Of course, I bought it to use on your dad.
But you always say that having just Rilla is enough? Well, in front of the troubled Eleanor, I thrust the bundle of photos at Garrett. It seems like there's demand for Eleanor. Other than you, Garrett. Garrett looked at the photos, utterly shocked. He snatched the bundle of photos from me, and also grabbed the documents from the detective, spreading them all over the large table and scrutinizing every detail. Madison let out an exasperated sigh in place of the speechless Garrett. "Geez, what are you doing, Eleanor?" My in-laws and Rilla, who peeked at the photos, were also surprised and dumbfounded. No wonder, as the scenes clearly showed Eleanor arm in arm with a young man, smiling as they entered and exited a hotel. Last year, I saw Eleanor going in and out of a hotel. So I hired a detective to investigate her conduct. I thought it might come in handy someday. Eleanor glared at me with a fierce expression. "Hiding and investigating someone. You have a really nasty personality, don't you?" "Oh please, I'm no match for you, Eleanor." After crossing her arms and confronting me for a while, Eleanor scoffed through her nose. It seemed she decided to act defiant now that it had come to this. "You're just as stupid as Lola, aren't you?" "What did you say?" "You act like an elite, but you never even noticed that I was cheating all over the place. Do you think it's not possible because you're so confident in yourself?" Deluded self-confidence is scary, isn't it? She hurled sarcastic remarks at Garrett, whose face had turned red, with an arrogant attitude. "What are you dissatisfied with about me? Unlike at Madison's place, I haven't let you lack for money, and you have a cute daughter. You're a housewife just like you wanted, right? What more do you want?" Eleanor looked at Garrett, who was burning with anger, with a contemptuous gaze. "You're 51, I'm only 42. I married you for the money but soon regretted it. I thought it'd be a waste to be tied to one husband when I'm this young and beautiful. Don't screw with me." Even in the face of Garrett's anger, Eleanor showed no sign of being intimidated. "If you don't like it, want a divorce? Fine, but Rilla will come with me, won't she? Because she likes mommy more than daddy. Right?" Eleanor smiled triumphantly. "I've been getting lots of allowance from the guys I tricked by pretending to be pregnant too. That pregnancy test is really handy. It was a miscalculation that someone saw me pushing you two into the sea. But just testimonies probably aren't enough to decisively arrest me." At that line, I stopped the recording app on my smartphone. I immediately called the police. Yes, the culprit who pushed her husband and daughter into the sea has confessed. I recorded the audio evidence too. After hanging up, I said to the dumbfounded Eleanor with a smile, "I found out one more thing during the investigation into your conduct. Turns out you were pressing your affair partners by saying I got pregnant and extorting money for surgery from them. That's..." Eleanor was at a loss for words. But with it firmly recorded, she probably can't make excuses anymore. Eleanor fell silent for a bit, then gave a strained smile. "I just remembered an errand, so I'll head home first." The moment she opened the door, she ran into two police officers. "Oh? Where are you going?" "You're suspected of assault and also being sued for fraud. Could you please accompany us to the station?" "Assault?" "Pushing them into the sea was just a joke. It was an ebb tide at the time." The police officers placated the protesting Eleanor with a practiced air. Yes, we'll hear the rest at the station. You too, young lady." "Huh? Me too?" the police told the shocked Rilla. "Multiple witnesses say they saw two women approaching the couple. Mom's the one who planned and carried it out. I had nothing to do with it." Eleanor exploded at Rilla's assertion. "You're trying to pin the crime on me?" "We'll ask you at the station. Now, let's go." The police urged Eleanor and Rilla and left the hotel. How did it come to this? Madison consoled Garrett, who had slumped to the floor, with sympathy. You always let Rilla run wild and do as she pleased since she was little. It seems you were so smitten that you didn't say anything even when Eleanor was out partying at night. This is the bed you made for yourself. Garrett, who normally would have snapped back at Madison, seemed to lack the energy to retort. He just held his head in his hands and let out a small groan of despair. After Eleanor and Rilla were taken in for voluntary questioning, my family and my in-laws checked out of the hotel. Only a haggard Garrett headed straight home, while the rest of us stopped by some tourist attractions on the way back to enjoy the rest of our trip. I had thought my in-laws would be saddened, but it turned out they had long been troubled by Rilla and Eleanor's selfish attitudes as well. I hope the police give them a good talking to, Katie remarked, to which Alvin nodded with a grim expression. Rilla and Eleanor had teamed up to push Madison and Lola off the cliff. Or perhaps it was the work of just one of them. The two tried to blame each other, insisting they hadn't done it, but eyewitness testimonies led to the verdict that they were both guilty. Although Rilla was taken into custody, she was strictly warned and sent home since Madison and Lola didn't want to press criminal charges. Eleanor also received a suspended sentence and settled the matter by paying compensation to Madison and Lola. However, she was sued by multiple people for marriage fraud. Due to the malicious nature of her crimes and lack of remorse, she was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Naturally, Garrett and Eleanor got divorced. Garrett took custody of Rilla. Rilla had pretended to be a good kid at school, but her true colors were revealed with this incident and she was expelled. Afterward, she didn't work part-time and instead played around using the allowance she got from her grandparents. When she ran out, she would pester Garrett for money, so their days were filled with constant quarreling. Since the incident, Rilla stopped harassing Lola. It seemed she had been sternly warned by her grandparents that they would cut ties with her if she caused Lola any more trouble. The honest and obedient Lola was doted on by her grandparents more than ever. While working hard at her studies, Lola also seemed to be enjoying typical dates with her boyfriend. There will likely be all sorts of events regarding romance in the future. I silently vowed to myself to maintain the kind of relationship where Lola could confide in me as a woman if she was ever troubled.
You get it, right? It's a divorce. I'm bored being with you.
I was stunned, unable to utter a single word in response. I had suspected the possibility of him cheating, but I never imagined he would bring up divorce like this.
Why?
I prefer younger women over middle-aged ones. It's as simple as that. His words left me speechless. The only thing I could say was,
"Thank you for everything,"
I told Mike. Then I hugged our son, Henry, tightly. I had a vague idea about Mike's infidelity, so I was prepared to discuss divorce. However, it's something that should be done privately between the two of us. It should never be done in front of our child. And bringing his mistress home was absolutely unacceptable. I felt my anger exploding inside me. If he wants to play dirty, I have no choice but to fight back with everything I've got. It's too late for regrets now. He can cry alone after losing everything. I gave Mike a harsh, piercing look. My name is Rala. I work for an interior design company. I've always loved interior design, so I have no major complaints about my job. In my personal life, I married Mike when I was 31, and we were blessed with a son, Henry. I'd like to say my life has been perfect, but that's not entirely true. I'm dealing with a huge problem, and the cause is Mike. I work for the company Mike runs, but his management skills are somewhat lacking. To make matters worse, he seems to be having an affair with some woman.
I wanted to build a happy family, but maybe it's better to get a divorce now.
13 years into our marriage. At the age of 44, I find myself at a crossroads in life. Though I'm considering divorce now, it was the furthest thing from my mind when we first got married. In fact, I believed meeting Mike was my destiny. Our paths crossed at the bank where I started working after graduating high school. It was in the midst of a recession, so I felt lucky to land a job with just a high school diploma. I was grateful and poured myself into my work. A few years later, Mike visited the bank for the first time.
I need to discuss something about my company's account.
Certainly, I replied, maintaining my usual professional demeanor. Despite my matter-of-fact tone, Mike complimented me on my service.
Thank you for your courteous assistance,
he said before leaving. What a smooth operator, I thought to myself. A few days later, on a Sunday, I ran into Mike at an interior decor store. You work at the bank, right?
The other day.
Mike's face filled with concern.
Did I do something wrong? No, I'm here on personal business today. Looking for a table for my home. Oh, I see.
Mike smiled, his expression softening. From there, he was quite loquacious. He enthusiastically discussed the store's products with me. Normally, I might have found such eagerness off-putting, but not this time. Perhaps it was our shared love for interior design. As our conversations continued, I found myself drawn to Mike. I began frequenting the store on my days off, and before I knew it, we were married. After the wedding, I quit my job at the bank to become a housewife. Mike's store dealt exclusively in high-end items. He seemed to be doing well financially, so I assumed the business was thriving. That's what I thought. However, I was about to uncover a shocking truth. A few months into our marriage, Mike asked me to visit the store. He wanted me to help organize the warehouse, but the moment I stepped inside, I was stunned.
What in the world?
It's just inventory.
This much inventory?
Piles upon piles of expensive, imported interior goods filled the space. Sensing something was amiss, I hastily checked the store's financial records. Just as I suspected, the management was a mess. Mike had been purchasing excessive amounts of luxury items, and most of them weren't selling. The store was operating at a complete loss. Looking back through the records, the losses began 2 years ago. When I asked the reason, it was when Mike took over the business. Prior to that, his late grandfather had been running the store. It became clear that Mike lacked business acumen. I scrambled to turn things around. First, I convinced him to stop selling the high-end inventory. Then, I reintroduced custom-made items.
Custom orders again? Communicating with the customers is time-consuming.
Mike grumbled.
They take time, but they're more profitable. Better than buying luxury goods that don't sell.
But
we need to go back to what worked in the past until we're out of the red.
Of course, there were no guarantees this would work. But we live in a small, rural town. Many of the town's residents have lived here for years, and customers from Mike's grandfather's days still call this place home. If we could win back those old clients. With that singular focus, I continued to support Mike.
I was running the store my way, but
Mike grumbled, but thanks to my efforts, we managed to turn things around. However, we didn't become significantly profitable, merely escaping the red.
We need to make our next move, or else.
Left to Mike's devices, the store would quickly go bankrupt again. Our employees would be out on the streets, and our own livelihood would be threatened. After much thought, I decided to put my banking experience to use.
From now on, I'll handle the administrative work. Leave all the back-end tasks to me. Then what am I supposed to do? As the president, you focus on sales, Mike. You have a strong sales ability, so put it to work.
Mike has a way with words. If he concentrates on sales, he should be able to produce results. Sure enough, Mike secured contract after contract. He also started a leasing business for the high-end inventory. And our performance skyrocketed. In no time, we had regained our former glory. Now we should be stable. Or so I thought. Mike dropped a bombshell. With the workload increasing, I think we should hire more employees. I agreed with that opinion, but his next words left me shocked. For starters, I'm thinking of making Mom an executive.
Susan?
Got a problem with that? Mike twisted his mouth. I hesitated, at a loss for words. Recently, we've had more customers and an increase in leasing and custom orders. That's why I'd been considering hiring more salespeople and account executives. I thought Mike would be on the same page, but I tried to gently argue my case.
Before adding executives, shouldn't we try increasing our sales or customer service staff? But Mom said she wants to help out at the store.
Mike's father passed away many years ago, leaving Susan to live alone. Maybe she has too much time on her hands. Or perhaps she's blinded by the money from our improved performance. Either way, she's not someone the company needs. I tried to persuade Mike to abandon the idea of hiring Susan. But right then, I discovered I was pregnant. Seizing the opportunity, Susan suggested,
"It'll be tough working while pregnant, right? Let me handle things for the meantime."
"Do you have work experience?"
"Don't worry. I used to work before I got married."
"And how long ago was that?" I couldn't bring myself to ask. Left with no choice, I replied,
"I'll do my best for as long as I can."
But Susan wasn't happy with that. She started spreading rumors to relatives and neighbors.
"My daughter-in-law is money hungry. She's so shameless, worming her way into my son's company."
Sure, money is important, but I only wanted to fix the store's tendency to operate at a loss. It's not like I'm working for the money. When I tried to argue that point, Susan retorted,
"Huh? Are you bad-mouthing Mike?" "No, that's not what I meant. A good wife supports her husband. Keep your unnecessary opinions to yourself."
Faced with her scolding, I had no choice but to fall silent. As my due date approached, I ended up having to leave work for the delivery. With me gone, it was inevitable that Susan would join the company. I had a lot I wanted to say, but I decided to hold my tongue. Some time later, I gave birth to Henry. After a few years of raising him, I returned to work. But it was too late. In my absence, the store's management had deteriorated. Of course, I had done everything I could before taking leave. So, the sales themselves weren't bad. The problem was with the financial statements. Despite the consistently strong sales, the bottom line was terrible. The culprits were undoubtedly Mike and Susan. They had been spending money left and right. It wasn't quite embezzlement, but their use of funds was definitely in a gray area. When I tried to talk to them about tightening the purse strings, Susan immediately started complaining.
"How dare you talk back, when you're just an in-law? This is a company matter. Being the daughter-in-law has nothing to do with it." "Is that so? Then let me tell you, a regular employee has no right to talk back to an executive."
At Susan's words, I fell silent. I was also treated as a director, at least in name. So, I wasn't a regular employee. I looked at Mike, hoping he would say something.
"Why are you getting so worked up? Aren't you just tired from raising a kid?"
"Yes, because you don't help out at all, Mike." I had intended to retort. But apparently, that struck a nerve with Mike. He raised his voice in anger.
What's with that attitude? If it's so hard, why don't you just quit your job?
If I quit the company now, it would definitely go bankrupt. For Henry's sake, I had to avoid that at all costs. As I remained silent, Mike laughed triumphantly. Then, with a nasty grin, he said,
If you don't like it, shut up and do as I say. I understand.
To protect the company, I had no choice but to keep working. I decided to quietly obey Mike and the others. As time passed, Henry started elementary school. By then, he had become less dependent. Thanks to that, I was able to focus on work. However, the company's financial situation didn't improve. Of course, it was due to Mike and Susan's wasteful spending. I also began to worry about Mike's lack of attention to Henry. He didn't show up to Henry's sports days nor parent-teacher conferences. Sometimes, he wouldn't even come home.
Could he be having an affair? The problems just keep piling up.
I found myself thinking that way more often. But even if I confronted Mike, I couldn't get the truth.
You know there's talk of redeveloping the area in front of the station, right? I'm just working hard to open a store in the new building. Isn't it strange that you can't come home because of that? It's not strange. That's how busy I am.
He would just dodge the question like that. Then, one day, after I got home from work, Henry said to me, I want a soccer ball for my birthday next week.
Oh right, you joined the soccer club, didn't you? I'll make sure to tell Mike. Do you think Dad will go shopping with me?
Henry looked anxious. Instinctively, I stroked Henry's head.
Don't worry. I'll make sure Mike makes time for you. Okay.
I don't think it completely dispelled Henry's anxiety. But it was the best I could do. After that, I brought up Henry's birthday to Mike over and over, both at home and at work.
I get it, you're being annoying,
he said.
You never do anything for him, so at least take the day off for his birthday. Promise me.
Yes. I was still anxious. But for now, I had no choice but to trust Mike. Filled with unease, I welcomed the day of Henry's birthday. I took the day off work and was preparing a meal for Henry when I suddenly noticed Mike getting ready to go out. You're not going to work, are you? I asked, and Mike simply replied that he had a surprise in store. So he was thinking about Henry after all. I felt relieved as I saw Mike off. Soon, the preparations for Henry's birthday celebration were complete. Just then, Mike came home.
I'm back!
Mike's cheerful voice rang out. I wonder what kind of surprise he has. My heart was pounding as I waited for Mike to enter the living room.
Sorry for the wait. Surprise!
Mike introduced the woman standing next to him. A young woman with heavy makeup, holding a large paper bag. She looked familiar to me.
Happy birthday, Henry! A present from your future mom.
The woman handed the bag to Henry. Henry seemed a little perplexed. I could understand how he felt. I also found her words unsettling.
Future mom? What do you mean, Anne?
I addressed the woman in front of me and tilted her head. Huh?
It means exactly what I said.
Her exaggerated gesture irritated me. But then Mike interjected.
What, you still don't get it? Can you explain what's going on? I'm saying Anne is going to marry me and become Henry's new mom.
Mike slapped divorce papers on the table. Then he briefly flashed a marriage registration form from his breast pocket.
You get it, right? It's a divorce.
I'm bored being with you. I was stunned, unable to say a word. I had considered the possibility of him cheating. But I never imagined he would bring up divorce like this.
Why? I prefer younger women over a middle-aged one like you. It's as simple as that.
With those words, there was nothing left to argue. I could only say one thing.
Thank you for everything,
I told Mike. Then I hugged Henry tightly. I had a vague idea about Mike's infidelity. So, I was prepared to discuss divorce. However, it's something that should be done privately between us. It should never be done in front of our child. And bringing his mistress home was absolutely unacceptable. I felt my anger exploding inside me. If he wants to play dirty, I have no choice but to fight back with everything I've got. It's too late for regrets now. He can cry alone after losing everything. I gave Mike a harsh, piercing look. At the same time, I glanced at Anne. Then, with a nasty grin, and started to speak.
What's with that look? You're scaring me. Mike, help me.
Are you okay? My middle-aged wife was being rude. Mike made a gesture as if comforting Anne. His exaggerated actions only fueled my anger. In any case, taking care of the shocked Henry was my top priority right now.
Henry, are you all right?
Yeah.
Then, let's go to Grandpa's house.
For now, I decided to take Henry to my father's place. We'll deal with the rest later.
I'll contact you once I file for divorce. We can discuss compensation after that. Okay?
I told Mike unilaterally and took Henry to his room. While calming him down, I packed a bag with Henry's change of clothes. I'm sorry, Henry, for all of this. I won't let that woman have Henry. As I was thinking that, Henry said something unexpected.
I don't really like Dad anyway. More importantly, Mom, are you okay?
Henry peered at my face with concern. There's no doubt Henry was shocked too. But he wasn't shocked by our divorce. I heard later that he was shocked when Anne said she would become his mother. But at that time, all I could think about was getting Henry out of the house. I quickly left the house with Henry, taking only the bare necessities. We headed straight to my parents' home. When I explained the situation to my parents, they welcomed us warmly. Leaving Henry with my parents, I went to the courthouse. I signed the divorce papers on the spot and submitted them.
Remember this, Mike. You will pay for hurting Henry.
I then went directly to my workplace. It was a holiday, but the store was open. After all, holidays are our busiest times. I greeted the employees in the store and entered the office. Susan was there. In front of several employees, I handed Susan my resignation.
What's this? It's my resignation.
The moment I said that, the office erupted in murmurs. Meanwhile, Susan retorted nonchalantly.
I saw Mike leave with a young woman earlier. Did he perhaps bring up divorce? That's right. I've already filed the divorce papers.
Oh, good for you.
Now we can get rid of the nagging daughter-in-law,
Susan said mockingly. Looking at her, I shot back.
In any case, we're no longer related. Please make sure to tell Mike that.
Fine by me.
We won't have any problems without you around.
Susan's words irritated me. But I tried to leave the office without saying anything back. I noticed the employees were trembling for some reason. As I was wondering why, Mike walked in.
Mom,
I'm getting a divorce and remarrying, Mike announced to Susan as soon as he entered. That's when he noticed I was there.
What are you doing here, Rolla? Just dropping off my resignation.
Oh, I see. That will be a relief. Mike laughed nastily. Behind him, I could see Anne. I glanced at and before turning to Mike.
Repaying the loans will be tough, but do your best, everyone. Loans? What are you talking about?
Mike looked stunned. I sighed and replied, "The company's loans. In other words, debt. You need to pay them back properly."
What? There are loans?
Mike looked at a nearby employee, who nodded slightly. "Yes, there is. You're the president, and you didn't know?"
You said you will handle all the administrative work.
Ah, that's right. Well, let me explain everything before I leave. I went to my desk, turned on my computer, and showed him a file. This is the list of the company's loans. There's a lot, including working capital and equipment investment costs. Mike was shocked when he saw the list. Then, he raised his voice at me.
What the hell is this amount? Why did we take out so many loans?
We had no choice. Because you and Susan kept wasting money on expenses. No matter how much I told them, Mike and Susan never stopped wasting money on unnecessary expenses. I thought this would put a strain on our management. So I temporarily took out loans. After that, I gradually cut expenses and used the profits to repay the loans. That's how I spent years improving the worst financial statements. But that ends today. Starting tomorrow, Mike and the others will have to handle things themselves. And since I'm leaving, I have to give them one more piece of terrible news. About those loans, the repayment deadline is the end of this month.
What? What do you mean? Why do we have to pay them back all at once?
That was the agreement. If I quit, the loans must be repaid immediately. When I took out the loans, I consulted with the bank. But our financial statements were too poor. They said they could lend us a small amount because our sales were good, but they couldn't give us a large loan. So, I thought about it. Should I make do with a small loan? Or should I set up a long-term repayment plan? In the end, I chose the latter. And I used my personal connections to secure loans for the company. In other words, they trusted me when they gave us the loans. So, if I'm gone, there's no guarantee of repayment. That's why I made it so the loans would be due immediately if I quit.
What the hell?
It was the only way. Because you wouldn't cut back on wasting money on expenses. I looked at Mike and Susan alternately. They both quietly averted their gazes. There's no grace period for the loans, so if they demand repayment, you have to pay right away.
What are we supposed to do? We're in the middle of pouring funds into the station front redevelopment project.
I don't care. If you want to avoid bankruptcy, you have no choice but to repay the loans.
Damn it.
Mike slumped to the floor. I glanced at Susan and saw that she was flustered. The sight of them was so comical that I teasingly continued. Make sure you repay the loans before someone intervenes in the management.
What? Intervene in the management?
That's what will happen if you don't repay the loans. Like changing the president or something. I laughed deliberately. Then Mike started trembling. Leaving Mike and the others like that, I walked out of the office. And, who was standing at the entrance, kept staring at me. I returned a smile to her as well. As we passed each other, and muttered,
"Remember this, you lowlife woman."
It was you who cheated, wasn't it? I thought that, but I didn't say it out loud. No matter what, I can't back down now. I hope they fall on hard times and struggle with money. I thought it would turn out that way, but it didn't. Somehow, Mike managed to secure funds from somewhere. The person who gave us the loan contacted me, saying they had been paid back in full. If that's the case, I'll just have to make my next move. I whispered to myself and played my next card for revenge. A few days later, when I went to Mike's house to get my things, Mike was inexplicably waiting for me. Of course, even though Henry's and my belongings were there, we were divorced, so I couldn't just enter the house without permission. That's why I contacted him before going, so I was prepared to be watched. But something seemed off about the situation. He was waiting for me in front of the entrance.
Why are you waiting outside? I had something I wanted to ask you.
Something to ask? When I asked him back, Mike continued with a strangely sullen look on his face.
Ever since you quit, our customers have been steadily decreasing.
Apparently, lease contracts were being canceled one after another since I left the company. Moreover, the number of custom order clients was also decreasing, and contracts that were in progress had been called off.
Isn't that because there's a problem with you?
It goes without saying, but I knew the reason. However, I wasn't about to tell him for free. So, I tried saying that sarcastic remark. Suddenly, Mike started getting angry.
Don't play dumb. This is your doing, right?
What evidence do you have to say that?
Our employees told me. They said most of our current customers are your acquaintances.
As I thought, the employees understand the company's situation better than Mike, the president. In fact, many of our current customers are my acquaintances. And not just casual acquaintances either. Most of them were introduced to us as customers by my uncle on my mother's side, Ben, who runs a business. In other words, it's more like we got the contracts through Ben's connections rather than my own. Naturally, even my relationship with them is tenuous, so if I'm gone, it's practically the same as having no connection at all. Of course, if the company were doing good business, the customers would likely continue their relationship with them. But Mike not only lacks management skills, he's the kind of person who mixes personal feelings into work and makes his own mother an executive. It's only natural to feel uneasy about the company's future prospects. That's probably why the deals are being called off one after another. Too bad for you.
Don't screw with me. You must be saying unnecessary things.
I'm sorry, but I only quit the company.
The contracts were canceled because you lack ability, right?
At my words, Mike was at a loss for words. He glared at me with a bitter expression, so I continued. It's a huge mistake to resent me.
Everything that happened was your doing, Mike. That's not true.
It is true. You're the one running the company, Mike. You're the one who cheated. You're the one who discarded me. Do you realize now how much you were relying on me? Maybe now you understand a little. But even if you realize it now, what once was lost can never be regained. When I expressed my anger, Mike bit his lip, his eyes brimming with tears. I brushed past Mike and entered the house. Then, I packed up my and Henry's belongings. Just as I finished contacting the moving company, Mike muttered something.
Enough already. I'm going to turn things around with the station front redevelopment. Don't come crying to me when I succeed again.
With those words, Mike pushed me out of the house and shut the front door. You're an idiot.
As if I'd give you a chance to make a comeback.
If I'm going to do this, I'll do it thoroughly. I will never forgive Mike and the others. They did this to themselves. I'll just do everything in my power to corner them. With those thoughts in mind, I turned my back on Mike's house. However, it was a big gain to find out what Mike was planning to do to rebuild the company. I should make my moves with that in mind. If it's come to this, I'll use my trump card. I made a phone call to a certain person. A few weeks later, I was visiting a local company with my new boss. A lot had happened around me during those few weeks. First, I demanded compensation from Mike and Ann. Mike complained but agreed to pay the amount I requested. Of course, it was difficult to pay in a lump sum. So, he promised to pay in several installments. On the other hand, and refused to pay the compensation. But as soon as I mentioned going to court, her attitude changed. Apparently, Anne's father decided that going to court would be troublesome. Upon further investigation, it turned out that Anne's father was a real estate agent. He probably didn't want to be seen as having problems with the station front redevelopment. The station front redevelopment project is one of the largest public works projects. The profits are also substantial, so he couldn't ignore it. In the end, Anne's father agreed to pay the compensation to settle the matter.
I'll pay the compensation, so you should agree to Mike remarrying.
Anne said something like that to me, but it has nothing to do with me. I told her to do whatever she wants, and laughed as if she had one. With the divorce issue resolved, I made a fresh start and took on a new job. My first assignment was today's office visit. However, I ran into an unexpected person there.
Huh? Why is Rolla here?
Huh? Mike? The person I met at the reception desk of the company I was visiting was Mike, and was standing next to him. I quietly averted my gaze. But it was too late after we had already seen each other. Mike approached me and began to speak with a stern look on his face.
What? Are you still trying to interfere?
That's. Of course, I won't say that I didn't intend to interfere. But I didn't expect to run into him here. At this rate, it will cause trouble for the company we're visiting. And for my boss who accompanied me. I was perplexed. In the midst of this, Mike started complaining.
In the first place, what is a woman like Rolla doing in a place like this?
It's for work. I tried to be vague, but Mike wouldn't even allow that.
Work? This is the real estate company that will manage the building being constructed in front of the station for the redevelopment. I know that. Moreover, it's a major player in the real estate industry. There's no point in Rolla coming to a branch office of such a company.
Mike laughed. Next to him, and was laughing too. Annoyed, I retorted to Mike.
You're out of place here too, aren't you?
Out of place? Our company is the largest interior leasing company in this area. The new building will house hotels and commercial facilities as well. Naturally, that means there will be a high demand for interior design. Mike's company is probably the only one in the area that can meet those needs. And spoke about it in a haughty manner. That may have been true, up until now. But now, as I was thinking that, my boss interjected.
You're Rolla's ex-husband, right? I didn't get a chance to greet you at Rolla's wedding. Huh? And you are? I'm Ben, Rolla's boss. I'm also her uncle.
As soon as Ben said that, Mike's face turned pale. Staring intently at Ben's face, Mike muttered.
Don't tell me, are you the Ben from that famous interior design company? Yes, our company does interior design work, but we also handle fixtures and furniture installation.
It turned out that Ben's business is an interior design company. Painting and wallpapering are part of interior design work. In addition, Ben's company also does furniture installation. Furniture installation refers to the construction of built-in furniture. In that regard, Ben's company also employs furniture craftsmen. Of course, to select furniture that matches the interior, they have many acquaintances who are general furniture craftsmen.
So, in other words, Ben's company also deals with domestically produced interior items. So, you're saying your objective is the same?
Mike asked timidly. I smiled nastily and nodded.
In a broad sense, yes. However, our company will also be doing interior construction work. Wait a minute. Ben's company isn't from around here.
I understand what Mike is trying to say. In fact, Ben's company is not local. It's located in the heart of the city, not in the rural area where we live. That alone makes it unnatural for them to take on this job. That's probably what Mike wanted to say. But there's a reason for that.
Actually, my cute niece got divorced and consulted me about wanting revenge on her ex.
At Ben's words, Mike turned pale. Amid that, Ben continued.
Originally, we were planning to establish a branch office much earlier. But since my niece said she would become a rival to her husband's company.
In other words, even if it's just a part of it, Ben's company has some business operations that overlap with Mike's company. Of course, it's only in terms of handling furniture. Everything else is a completely different industry. But that small overlap was a cause for concern. Ben's company is quite well known. On the other hand, only locals know about Mike's company. If Ben opens a branch office, there's a possibility that customers will be taken away. That's what I thought. So, I made this proposal to Ben.
Mike's company will provide the furniture instead of Ben's company.
Basically, I asked him to treat Mike's company as a local company with ties to Ben's company. Naturally, with the credibility of Ben's company, it was easy to secure contracts at first. That's how I restored the performance of Mike's company by boosting its credibility. After that, I asked Ben's company to hold off on expanding into the area. By doing so, I was protecting Mike's company. But with Mike's infidelity and divorce, I no longer had a reason to protect his company. So, I had Ben expand into the local area and got hired by his company. Of course, since our industries are different, I don't know if it will have an impact on Mike's company. Still, it should disrupt Mike's plan to turn things around with the station front redevelopment. That's what I thought, but the damage seems to be greater than I anticipated. After hearing the sequence of events from me, Mike slumped to the floor. Moreover, he started crying right then and there. It's over. It's all over. Feeling embarrassed, I quickly left the scene with Ben. After that, Mike's company, which had bet on the redevelopment project, quickly went bankrupt. Apparently, in an attempt to capitalize on the redevelopment project, he had been throwing money around left and right. Moreover, he seemed to have been working behind the scenes, even giving money to people who had no authority. All of that turned out to be a waste, and the inability to recover the funds was the cause of the bankruptcy. It also came to light that he had borrowed money from various places to repay the company's loans. These were completely personal loans, so Mike is now being asked to repay a large sum of money. Incidentally, Mike started working as a construction worker at the redevelopment site to pay off his debts. Susan is working with him, and it seems they are supporting each other to pay off the debt. However, Anne, who remarried Mike, claims she was deceived and is fighting with him. Apparently, she has already started preparing for divorce, so it seems and has no intention of supporting Mike. Putting that aside, and is being asked by her father to repay the compensation she paid me. So, I don't think and will get through this unscathed either. In the end, it looks like everyone has hit rock bottom. In contrast to Mike and the others, who have become so miserable, I am living a happy life. Work at Ben's company is going well too. I feel like Henry is becoming an even better child. On a whim, I asked Henry, who was getting ready to go to school.
Henry, aren't you shocked about your dad? What's this all of a sudden? Do you want to remarry or something?
That's not it. But if he's not shocked, then that's fine. Because right now, Henry is my everything. For Henry's sake, I'll do my best too. Mumbling those words, I left the house together with Henry.